My name is Adam Krieger with Preferred Strategies. I'd like to thank everybody for attending our workshop today, using modern analytics to enable data-driven decisions. We're going to go through a few PowerPoint slides, hopefully within just a few minutes, and dive right into the meat of the workshop. I have on the workshop as well, Michelle Workmeister. She's going to be walking us through all the exercises once we get going on the hands-on. And myself and David Kettinger will be available to help address any questions or assistance that people might need that we're able to do so remotely while the workshop is happening. So thanks again for setting aside a couple hours of your time today. I wanted to set a little bit of the stage. This workshop, what the expectations are and really what the purpose. I think you'll see how from an existing data model that we'll speak about from QuickLaunch, how you're able to create JDE reports and dashboards. You're actually going to build one through the training, but this is a hands-on report authoring workshop. So if you weren't expecting to get hands-on today, feel free to just sit back and watch. But the intent was really to kind of watch on one screen and be following along and building it on your own. We did set up an environment. Hopefully, we had a couple people that responded with some challenges getting connected, but so far we haven't got much feedback regarding people not being able to connect. So go ahead, next slide, Michelle. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of the agenda, just a couple slides about overview, dive into the hands-on. We will address questions at the end, and in the questions panel, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, but that's where you can go ahead and post those. And then if it makes sense throughout the session, we might tackle some of those in between some of the lessons, but for the most part, I think, most of the questions, we'll just get those at the end. Next. So if those of you that don't know Preferred Strategies, we're a company, we've been dedicated to BI for 17 years. We sole focus as an organization is helping JDE customers get better access to their data and analyze their data and make that a valued asset within the organization. We really look to partner with companies that value data as much as we do. And really, this is a journey. And for any company that thinks you can just plug in a piece of software and magically everything's going to work and it's not going to get your coffee for you, it's not going to, it's a journey to make this work for not just JD Edwards, but also the other systems you might have. What QuickLaunch delivers is really a framework, and that's really what you'll be doing hands-on with today, is the starting point of a framework. But really, the idea is that if you're looking, as you're an organization that's looking to become more data-driven, this is the best place to start. We provide you the ability to take what works well with JD Edwards and then apply it throughout the organization with QuickLaunch. Next. What's so complicated about getting access out of JDE? If any of you have actually had to go back to the database and try and inquire on any data at the database level, there's 4,000 tables, 80,000 fields, cryptically named, table names, F0006, F0101 for the address book. The dates are in a Julian format. The fields are cryptic. The amounts in units, there's no quantity specified in the data itself, so you've got to calculate that. The fiscal calendars, if you're on a 445 calendar or have 3 different companies all on different fiscal date patterns, how do you get year to date to calculate based on business days on that? These are all the complicated things that we've addressed over the years and built into our model. Every company has unique category codes. So that's something that you need to figure out how, whether or not it's a 1, 2, all the way up to a 10-character cat code, how you're going to address that. So that's kind of what we do. Next. So the emphasis of what you're going to be doing is building out a Power BI report. For those of you that are new to Power BI, it's Microsoft's market-leading data visualization tool, and that's becoming the de facto standard. We're seeing a lot of companies already have it as either part of their Office 365, or if you have to buy it, it's $10 per user per month. But because it's kind of builds right into a lot of the Microsoft technology stack, we're finding a lot of customers that that's just their chosen solution. So What we're going to demonstrate today is how to use that against JD Edwards to build content very quickly and easily without starting from scratch, right? So the key is when we connect, we've already set up a report out there that you're going to recreate, but it's all built off of a data model. So in the middle of the screen here, we have this data model. This data model becomes your single version of the truth. So it's already defining relationships. So in the case of like today with sales, it's going to be relating from the sales open orders 4211 and the historical related to the item branch, to the customer, parent, sold to, shipped to the branch, to the subledgers, all of those things, and then the measures, sales, gross profit, quantity ordered, quantity shipped. We also can calculate net sales, things. But so really there's these measures and KPIs, relationships, all the things that are difficult or require typically someone from IT to go in and build out for an organization is kind of there as a starting point within the model. So that's what we're going to build the report from today. Everybody should have their own unique account, and we'll speak to that. The last thing on the left here, we're not going to get into deep, but there's a variety of different approaches that we support, whether or not you want to run this model that you're going to see directly over JD Edwards data. We can feed that in memory from JD Edwards. We can mirror the data, so if you don't want to go directly against JD Edwards, we can do that and then load the model from that. And we also have a star schema data warehouse for those that definitely know that they need or want a data warehouse. Next slide. So some logistics for today. So now we're going to switch it over. Michelle's going to take over in just a minute. In the email that we sent out, hopefully you got that. We're able to click on and test that it was able to work. We do, hopefully you have two separate monitors. It would be much easier if you're watching Michelle on one monitor while you're working on the second monitor. I think that'll be the best experience. If you have Google Chrome, highly recommend that that's the browser that you use. The credentials, and Michelle will walk you through it, but when you get to powerbi.com, your user account is going to be the first letter of your first name and your last name at biquicklaunch.com. So for instance, you can see here, if I'm Adam Smith, asmith at biquicklaunch.com would be my user account. And the password is going to be let me see with 3s instead of E's. Okay. And then back to, as I mentioned about the email, so the questions, if you want to just post questions, or if you're hitting any snags, then go ahead and just post those in the Q&A panel, and we'll address those directly if we can. If it makes sense to interrupt or in between a lesson, address those as a group, we will. Also, if the speed is too fast or too slow, just feel free to provide feedback in there. My guess is that with this many people on, there's going to be a mix. So it might just be, just kind of go with it. However, if you feel like you're getting caught behind on certain exercises, you'll see once we get in there, we've created lesson starting points. So don't hesitate. If you get caught behind, you can go right back and then start at the next exercise to where you should have been had you not gotten caught behind. So even if for whatever reason someone comes in your office and you have to, take a peek, you can come back 5 minutes later and just wait for the next lesson to start, and you can catch right up. So, so now I'd like to introduce Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for walking us through this workshop today, and it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Adam, and welcome everybody to our workshop. So I'm excited to show you guys over about the next hour and a half, introduce you to Power BI and help you guys to create your first report. So within Power BI, there's two experiences we can use to create reports. We have a desktop experience and the web experience. We are going to use the web for the purposes of this workshop. So as Adam mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and just start right here in my, I'm using Chrome, and I'm going to start right here. And in my browser, I'm just going to type in that Power BI to go ahead and get us started. So if I just start typing in Power BI, I can hit enter. I'll automatically be redirected to the sign-in screen. So if you guys can all go ahead and navigate along with me, open your browser and log in with those credentials that Adam had mentioned. Hopefully you guys have logged in already and tested those to make sure they're working. If for any reason you didn't get the email, you misplaced the email, it got deleted, please go ahead and just throw a message in that chat window over to David or Adam, and they can get you set back up so you can get going. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to log in. There's two options from this menu to start up. So up in the top right-hand corner, we have a sign-in option or a sign up for free. Now, I know a lot of us, because it's the holiday season, we've been shopping online, we're tempted to go for the deal. That option is really for brand new users. If you were to sign up for free, you'd create a profile, download the free desktop version, and you could begin working. You guys are all actually existing users already in our sandbox environment. So we're going to go ahead, and everybody on this webinar will go ahead and click that sign in option. And you're going to be prompted where you can enter your username. I have several usernames that I log in as, so I'll go ahead and just choose mine for this workshop, and you'll enter your password as well. We'll go ahead and click sign in. You will get prompted at the next screen to ask if you want to stay logged in. You're welcome to stay signed in. If for something happened and you popped out of your browser, you came back, it would just bring you right automatically back in when you typed in that Power BI. Because I bounce around quite a bit, I typically say no so that the next time I come in, I could change the user I'm logging in as. And now you can see we are successfully logged in to the Power BI desktop or Power BI on our web. Hopefully you guys all had success getting there. I'll pause for just a moment just to make sure. Okay, I don't see any messages coming through, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on, assuming that everybody's made it this far. This workshop, there's a lot of things we can talk about with Power BI, but in this workshop, we want to actually keep it really focused. So we've limited down how much data we have out there, everything that we're looking at, and we're really just going to focus on the bare minimum to get us going. So from within this interface, there's a couple items I want to point out. The first one is on the far left-hand side. You have your navigation pane. The navigation pane helps us anytime we're in this window to bounce around. We're going to focus all of our energies right now on my workspace. So in setting up this environment, David and Adam actually went out for all of us and created a workspace for us already, sitting in my workspace. Within a workspace, there's 4 different items. We have dashboards, reports, workbooks, or data sets. We will start here by looking at I'm just going to click on one and we'll see our data sets. A data set is going to be the parameters or the collection of data that we want to build our reports over. So as Adam mentioned, there's 4,000 tables in JDE Edwards. We know we don't want to see that. We're going to really limit that down. From that data set, we will then create reports over the set of data. So in our instance here, we have a data set that has already been created and for our sales analysis report. And we also have a report that was created for us called Sales Analysis Report. So everybody should be logged in to the Power BI. You should be able to navigate to my workspaces. And if you just click on reports and data sets, you should see the sales analysis report sitting out there. In a standard implementation, you might see additional data sets such as financial data, inventory data, warehouse data, and then you would also have a whole lot more than one report sitting out there. You can have multiple reports over one data set or over a single data set. Okay. To begin creating a new report, there's a couple different ways we could do it. If we wanted to start based on a data set, from within the data set window, under the Actions column, we can click on the first icon. and it would bring us into a blank canvas to create a report. The other way to create a report is to simply go to the Reports option, find an existing report that we already have, and then copy that report or create a new one. So what I'd like everybody to do is, back from your reports window, we are going to go ahead and start from the sales analysis report. So let's just click on Sales Analysis Report. As we log in here, our screen looks blank. It just happens to be that the first page of our report is blank. So a report in BI is where we're going to pull together visuals and charts, and we were trying to tell a story to drive action within our business. We're trying to give somebody within our organization the information they need to make business decisions quickly, that are informed and hopefully correct. So as we build that, we are going to create these reports with what they call pages. You may have a report that has a single page or 2 pages, or it might have 10 or 12 pages. There's no limit in the number of pages you can have, but you want those pages to provide value. So what we're looking for here is we actually have the pages across the bottom for our report. I'm just going to jump right over here to the sales analysis page. This is the page that you all saw in an email that was sent to you regarding this webinar. And this is the report we are going to create, or the page we are going to recreate for this report. I'm going to walk you guys through how to create each of the different elements that we see on here. We also have a page in here called Sales Detail. This sales detail looks a little bit more like a traditional report or just an Excel data dump of data. It's providing some context or details behind the picture that we saw in the first report. We are going to see at the end of this workshop how we can actually drill from the data on a chart or one of these visuals over to the details that make it up. So that's what we're hoping to get to. Now, what makes the perfect BI report? It's the report that works. So in our case, we have designed what I believe is the perfect report for this workshop. We have our inspiration report. What are we trying to build? We can all see our end goal. We also have created several pages along the bottom. The pages along the bottom are where we should be at the beginning of each lesson. So as we go through this, I will stop and say we're going to start lesson 2 or we'll start lesson 3. If at any point, as Adam mentioned at the beginning, you get caught behind, someone walks into your office, or you just can't figure out what we did, you can always come to that page, click on the page, and you will be at the starting point for the beginning of that lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. As we look at our screen right now, I am looking at the sales analysis report and I have a bunch of visuals. On these visuals, they can be controlled, or the data that I see on them, by these filters over on the far right-hand side. So this is what we would refer to as the filters pane. We can have a filter that affects the entire report, so every page that we have in the report. I typically see this used if I want to see everything for a specific company. I would just blanket across every visual and start limiting down that data. We can set filters for a specific page. Maybe I want to look at something at a specific period or by a business unit. If we select one of our visuals, we can also select filters on that specific visual. So there's 3 levels of filters. We're not going to play a lot with filters during this workshop, but I wanted to just make sure to point that out so you could see that. We are right now in what would be more of a consumer mode. We're in a consumption mode. I want to look at the data, maybe interact with it a little bit, changing a period or a year, or maybe a filter so I can see my specific company or business unit. But this is that end user experience. We want to actually create reports during this workshop. So what we want to do is we want to actually go into an edit mode. If you look at the top of your screen, you'll see a menu bar across the top. Right above the title of the report where it says Sales Analysis Report, there is a button called Edit Report. As soon as you click on this button, it is going to take us into an edit mode. This will allow us to make changes to the report that we're looking at and create new pages. So if everybody can go ahead and go into an edit mode on their report, we can get started. Once you're in edit mode, you'll notice your screen changed up just a little bit. You now have 2 additional panes available to you. So we've already looked at the filters pane. So I'm going to go ahead and just shrink that up so that I have a little bit more screen real estate. To shrink that up, in the top right-hand corner is a little arrow. Just click on that arrow. And now we have more of our canvas displayed. The canvas is this white space in the middle where we're viewing our visuals. I'm also going to shrink up as much as I can the pane on the left-hand side, making that canvas area as big as possible. The other 2 panes that are now visible to us are our visualizations pane and our fields pane. The visualizations pane is where we are going to set what is the visualization I want to see on the canvas. What's the picture that I want to paint with my data? What am I trying to demonstrate on the report? We will do that by selecting in the top portion what that visual is. We are going to go through a variety of these, but we have bar charts and graphs, and we have pie charts and waterfall charts. We're going to look at a lot of those as we go. We also have some KPIs that we can add in here. So these are just a few of them. Below the visualization, we actually have a couple sections. So the first section is our fields. Once I tell the system what type of picture I want, I have to tell it what data or what dimensions are going to make up that picture. We're going to define that in the visualizations section or visualizations pane under the fields section. So if I click on this gross profit by product group and region, I can see that that is a stacked bar chart based on product group and product subgroup with a legend of region and the value of gross profit. So this is where I define what I want to see. After I have the what, then I get to make it pretty. So we're going to go to the formatting brush. So as we go through this workshop, you're going to hear me say things like go to the visualizations pane in the fields section, or go to the visualizations pane in the formatting section. Okay. And that's where we're going. The last pane that we see on here is our fields pane. In the fields pane is where we're going to find the dimensions and the measures that we can then add into our visualizations. So what is the data that we want to see? What we have listed here are a list of all of the tables that were defined in the data set we're building the report over. So this is not every table in your system. It's not every table that was brought into Quick Start. It is just the tables that were defined in that data set. So we're not going to have a bunch of extra stuff out here. We try to keep that limited and we keep it clean. Within these tables, if we expand one of those, we're going to see that we have fields. So the fields, again, correspond over to your JD Edwards data. I have a branch table, I've got a branch, a description, I've got a branch type in here. These should look fairly similar to things that you see in your JD Edwards data today. These are going to provide, these fields or dimensions are going to provide context to the data that we see over in our charts. The other type of data that we might see in here are measures. So the measures are actually the amounts or the numbers that we see. As we go down and we look at some of these tables, I've got my branch, I've got my company. Those are pretty straightforward. This calendar table, I want to just point out, make sure everybody is familiar with it, because the calendar table is where we're going to come to really slice our data and add some time dimensions to it. So if I want to break something up and I want to specify a year that we're running over, or I want to select a specific period that we're looking at, or a quarter, we would find those items in this calendar table. Okay, so we will spend a lot of time in this calendar table pulling out those specific dimensions during this workshop. So this is a table that we've created as part of our solution that helps to bring all that data together and have a relationship between that data. We also, as we look down, we have tables like the customer table, looking at the customer master data information within JD Edwards. It's going to show things like the customer number and their name, but we're also going to see things in here like their credit manager, or even down to some of those category codes like region or sales reps. Those will be custom to your data. So you don't have all 50 category codes in here or all 30 category codes. You only have the category codes that add value in your system. So we also rename those so that they make sense here. You'll notice in any of our tables, you'll never see something called cat code 7 or cat code 4. We will always rename those to represent the data that is within the table. Now you'll notice some of my field names are getting cut off here as I'm looking at this, like this price adjustment. In order to resize this pane, all you have to do is take your mouse over, hover on the line between the visualization and the fields pane, and you can simply drag and drop that until your column is wide enough. So I'll make that just a little bit wider so that we don't have those fields cutting off too much on the field names. As we keep going down, we've got our customer, we've got the item branch or the item master here. As we look in there, we're going to see information like the item number, the item description, the third item number, short item number. So lots of those fields, again, that you should be familiar with. We're also going to see 3 fields that are very important as we go along on this workshop. And that is going to be our product group, our product subgroup, and our product itself. So these 3 items are going to make up the hierarchy that we use for many of our sales reports during the workshop. In some cases, we will actually go back to the item number, which would be taking us down to almost a SKU level. So we will be working quite a bit with this item branch. The last table we'll really focus on in this workshop is this sales table. This sales table is actually a blend of the 4211 and the 42119. So we seamlessly bring that data together for the user. They can click on that and they see listed down here all of the different dimensions from those tables, or the dimensions, I guess, that we've defined or brought in. It's not all the fields. Again, we're just bringing in the pieces that are important for the user, and we're trying to make the best user experience possible for the user. So we don't want to bring in a bunch of clutter or noise that just gets in the way of building the items that you need. The other item that we see in here in our sales table are we have our metrics. So the metrics are the amounts or the values. So within the sales table, we have information like order number and order date, but we also have things like sales amount. So I can see in here that I have that sales amount field listed. Or within there, so these are in subfolders, just to help group them and help get to them a little bit easier. We also break out things like quantity shipped or quantity ordered, gross profits. So what you're going to hear me refer to quite a bit as we go through the workshop is to open the sales table, go to the gross profit folder, and select gross profit percent. That will be our navigation path as we go through this, as we go through the workshop. So hopefully that gives you just a little bit of insight into our environment and what we're going to be looking at. Again, this is a very scaled down version of what would be a true sales solution or implementation. Again, we've really limited our fields for the sake of the workshop. One other thing I want to point out, a really good habit to get into, and this is one of those moments where I do as I say, not as I do. As we're navigating in this workshop, when we drill into a field, so if I go into my sales table and I go down to find GL and I add it to my report, it's always a good habit to go ahead and close those items back up. It will just help so the next time you go to find a value or we want to add that into our visualization, it's easier to get to. So it's always nice to kind of clean up as you go, as opposed to just destroying the whole window and blowing it all out, and then you're trying to navigate back through it. So I will try really hard as we go through also to be closing those items as we go through so that my screen stays as clean as possible. Excellent. Well, you guys have heard us talk way too much, and we told you that this was going to be hands-on. So we are going to go ahead and just jump right in here and get started. I want to have everybody start from a clean slate. So what we're going to do is, if you go down or navigate to the bottom of your screen, there's a yellow box with a little plus mark in it. Let's go ahead and just click on that. This is going to add a new page to our report. So this will be our starting point for this workshop. In order to get going and start building the report, we need to actually start pulling in some data. What I want to look at is I want to see my total sales by customer. In order to pull this out, we need to pull in one dimension field and one metric. The dimension field that we want to pull in is just customer name. So in the fields pane, we're going to navigate down to the customer table. We're going to find the customer name field and just simply drag and drop that over into the white space of your canvas. And you will now see a listing, looks kind of like a single column of a spreadsheet with just the customer name. I'm going to go ahead and close that back up. And next, I want to go ahead and add the sales amount. So I'm going to navigate down to the sales table. Under the sales amount folder, and I'm just going to find sales amount. And again, I'm going to drag and drop that right into that visual that was created for us. And what we see listed here is just a table of data with our customer name and our sales amount. Okay. If we want to change this data into a visual, the way we can do that is in our visuals pane at the top. All we have to do is simply click on a visual. So let's change this into a stacked column chart. All I'm going to do is click on that second item in, and it is going to take my data and put it into a chart. Now, because we only have this one visual on the screen, we can actually have this take up a little bit more real estate. So what we want to do is to resize this visual. To resize the visual, we're going to click inside the visual and we're going to add focus to the visual. You'll know that the visual has focus when you see the little boxes around the side of it on each of the corners and then one in the middle. Once you have focus, you can simply drag and drop that visual to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take up about 75% of my screen here, 60% of the screen. This just allows us to see more of the data. Now again, with this data selected, we can change our visual type. So maybe we want to actually see, instead of this clustered column chart, we want to see a clustered bar chart. All I'm going to do is navigate over one, click on that option, and it's going to change it from a columnar report here to the bars. And I can see listed down on the side now each of my customers with the bar chart. This looks pretty good, but I kind of look at choosing visuals. It kind of reminds me of getting dressed. I never quite get the right outfit the first time. Sometimes I look at that data, and as much effort as I put into making sure I thought it was going to be just right, it just doesn't look good when it gets on the screen. So I love the fact that I can change those visuals simply by clicking on the visual. I don't have to go back and redefine everything from the beginning. I want to go ahead and change this data. I actually think it's going to be more meaningful if I look at it in a donut view, or from like a pie chart, pie missing the middle. So as I navigate over and I look at my icons, I'm going to click on the donut chart. So it's that round pie missing the center. Some of you might be thinking, why doesn't she just say it's the third row, fourth one in, or third row, fifth one in? And that's because depending on the size of that visualization pane, it will actually render those, and they move around a little bit. So I will focus a lot more on what the picture is as opposed to where it is located. So I'll try to go slow as I'm choosing those visualizations so that you have a chance to find those on your screen, because they might look a little bit different again, depending on the size of your pane. So now hopefully everybody has been able to change their visual to be a pie chart. Now, as we're looking at this pie chart, I can see, or it's not a pie chart, I'm sorry, the donut. The donut, it's pie missing the center, I don't know. I can actually see by customer their sales and what piece of the donut they contribute to. Now, if you hover over any one of those, it's going to bring up an indicator here that shows us the actual sales amount for that item. Now, I can always hover, but if I want to see more data, remember we talked about how these pictures need to tell a story and they need to help the user get to a place where they can make informed decisions quickly. They don't necessarily always want to have to dig around to find their data. Or even hover over it. As nice as that is, sometimes it's just not the most practical way. So one of the things we can do is we can actually change on this donut what is being displayed here as our indicator. So if we go ahead and click on the visual, in the visualizations pane, under the formatting section, so click on that little painter brush, we're going to be able to go down over here, and under data labels, we can turn on this data to show us more information. So where it says label style, go ahead and do the drop down, and you can tell it what information do you want to see in the label. Right now it's just showing us the category or the customer name. I like it all, so I go down right there to the bottom and I choose all detailed labels, select that, and now I can see in here that for the Creekside warehouse, they spend total 22 million in sales, which is about 27.9% of our total sales. Okay, as opposed to Newegg over here, who spent about $2 million with us, which was about 2.6% of our total sales. Excellent. Hopefully everybody is doing well. I'm just going to take a quick check over here. I don't see anything in the chat lines and no big red flags telling me I need to slow down or speed up. So hopefully this is a good pace for everybody. Again, if you get caught behind, let me know. As we are looking now at our data, we want to go ahead and actually see what makes up of this Creekside 22 million. What makes that up? So we want to provide a little bit more detail or value behind that. So in order to do that, we need to create a drill down in this report, or a drill. So we're going to add the next level of detail to this visual. What I'd like you to do is to select the donut, and then in the visualizations under the fields section, we are going to add the product group to this visual. So the product group, I'm going to come over here. It is in our sales table. I'm going to shrink up that sales amount. Or I'm sorry, and you guys got me. It is not in the sales table. Who caught that before I said it? The product group is in our item branch table. So let's navigate to the item branch. We're going to scroll down to that product group, and I'm going to go ahead and just add that in the visualizations pane in the fields section underneath legend. To add that over there, I just simply locate the field in my fields pane, and I do a drag and drop into the legends pane. So in fields under item branch, we find product group, and we drag it into the legend. This is going to create kind of the hierarchy or the drill down for this visualization. So now as I look at the visualization, if I want to drill down and say, what are the products that make up this 22 million? All I have to do is right click on that, choose drill down, and it's going to take me to the product group. To get back, I just right click and I say drill up, and it brings me right back. Now I could do that for any one of these companies. I could come over here to Newegg. Again, right click, drill down. It shows me how does that $2 million break apart there, and what percentage of those product groups make up that 2%. So we can see that Newegg is very heavy in appliances. Can right click and drill back up. Now this is pretty good, but what if I want to switch things around a little bit? Instead of starting my analysis at the customer level, I want to actually start by the product group. All we have to do is over here in the visualizations pane, underneath the legend, I'm going to just simply swap this. So I'm going to take product group and put it right above customer number. Or I'm sorry, go the other way. Customer number, drag it down and put it below product group. I always find it's easier to drag down than to go back, than to go up. So we're going to just swap that. You'll notice now that I can see that TVs and home theaters make up about $5 million of our total sales, or just a little under 6% of our total sales. Now I want to drill in and say, well, what are the customers? Who's buying those items? You know, how does that distribute out? Are we heavy at one particular customer, or is it fairly static around all of them? Now I could just do the right click and drill down, but I want to show you as many features as I can possibly squeeze into this 2 hours. So I want to show you how we can do a drill by simply clicking. What I'm going to do for this is in either the header or the footer section of your visual. It just depends on where your visual sits on the page. You're going to see these arrows. So for some of you, it may be at the top. Others, it may be right down here in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to click on the down arrow. This is going to turn on the drill down feature for this visual. So now, if I just simply click on TVs and home theater, it drills me down to show me how that breaks down by customer. Now I can get back up by either doing the right click and drill up, but we already know that way. So let's use the arrow instead. If I click that up arrow, it brings me back up. Now you'll notice that it does keep me in that drill mode. The way I know I'm in drill mode is the arrow has the little black circle around it. So I could then come back and I could navigate into jeans. You can see we only have 2 customers that are buying jeans. So then I could go ahead, back myself back up into the data. Excellent. I hope that you guys all had success. To get out of this drill mode now, all I have to do is click back on that little down arrow. It takes it away. And now, if I click, it just simply focuses the donut on that particular item. It does not drill me anywhere. I would need to do the right click in the drill. So that is how 2 ways to drill, either a right click or we can turn on the drill mode and we can go down 1 level. How we drill or the order is being defined over here in the visualizations pane underneath the legend. Let's go ahead and add some additional values to our visualization here to help tell the story. This is showing me what the total sales are, but if I really want the whole story, I might want to add some additional fields like the gross sales, or from gross sales, like gross profit or the gross profit percent. So we want to go ahead and add some of those items. Now, as we look at that, adding those just to this visual might not add a lot of value to us. But if I'm trying to do some analysis, I need to know those numbers. So what I want to actually add those to is when I do this little hover over the top, I want those items to actually appear here in this what they call a tooltips box. So in order to add those items, what we're going to do is in the visualizations pane, we're going to add those metrics here in the tooltips section. So I'm in the visualizations pane, the fields section underneath tooltips. So let's go ahead and add the first one, the gross profit. To add the gross profit, we're going to navigate over to our sales table. So in the fields pane, navigate to the sales table. It's in the gross profit folder. And we'll see it listed right there at the top called gross profit. I'm just going to go ahead and take gross profit and drag and drop it into the tooltips. Staying in that same folder, I'm just going to go down about 6 items and I'm going to find gross profit percent and do the same steps. I'm just going to drag and drop that over to the tooltips. Now, if I go back over to my visual, I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to hit refresh. I don't need to close everything, sign out, sign back in. All I have to do is come back over, hover over it, and I see those items automatically on my report. Pretty cool, right? I realize things are probably going a little bit slow right now. We will be speeding up and creating things a little bit faster, so just bear with me as we go through this. As we're looking at this data now, we've got this extra information added. We've added some information to our tooltips on our report, but we always have those users that are like, well, this picture's pretty, but where's my spreadsheet? Show me the data in a chart. We can quickly get there from any of these visuals in order to get this in more of that chart format. All the user has to do is come up here again in the header section, go to the more options or this little ellipsis, the 3 dots, furthest option to the right, click on that and select the option for show data. When you select the option for show data, it's going to split your screen in half. The bottom half is actually the chart that makes up the data that you're seeing in that picture or in that visual. So this is a quick way for users to get the data in a chart format from the picture. To get back to the report, all we have to do is up in the visual, in the top left corner, we can click the back button. One more time, because I know this gets people excited when we got to those charts. It's the ellipsis for more options, show data. Now, before anybody types the first question in, yes, there are options to be able to take this chart and send it out to Excel. We actually have those turned off in this sandbox environment. So just so you know, there is the ability to do that. You have the choice in your environment if you allow users to take data out to Excel or not. Obviously depends on your organization and if that's something that you do. So in our environment, we have that, that feature turned off. Excellent. As we go ahead and get prepared for our next section, we want to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to change this data because our users say, you know, I don't like the donut. I want it to be a chart. It has to be a chart. So we need that to be more permanent. So we are going to, for the last time in this exercise, change this visualization, and we are going to change it to a data table. So again, selecting our visual, we're just going to come over here to the visuals pane, and we're going to select the table option. And now we're going to see that same table that we saw when we did the drill. The only difference is the visual itself has turned into a table. So it's not just a quick pop over and come back. It is now permanently this data table. Now it does look a lot like a spreadsheet, but what we're doing here is we're doing some analysis. So what we see is a row for each unique set of data or each unique piece of data. So every customer, every product group, we have a row. We could actually be taking millions of records from JD Edwards and consolidating that down here to maybe, 1,000. If we need this data more consolidated, all we have to do is remove one of our dimensions. So if I just want to see this data listed as one row per customer, I'm going to remove the product group. To remove product group from this report, we're going to go to the visualizations pane, underneath values, just click the X next to product group. It will remove it from your report and you immediately consolidate that report down. So now we're looking at, instead of a couple thousand rows, maybe just a little under 100 rows of data, one per customer. I always think to myself, rule of thumb, the more dimensions, the more columns, the more rows of data you're going to see. The fewer you have, the more it's going to consolidate that data up, and we'll see fewer rows. So what are we trying to do with this data? Who are we trying to share it with? Let's go ahead on this report also for now, and let's remove the gross profit and the gross profit percent. So again, doing the same steps that we just did. Over in the visualizations pane under the values, we're just going to hit the X there, and we're going to remove those items. Okay. This is just, again, helping us to prep or get ready for the next exercise. We're going to resize our visual so it's a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to drag that a little bit smaller. So it's taking up about a quarter of the page now instead of 75% of that page. So you can do that from any one of the corners and just simply drag and drop that to resize that window. And now that we are done, we're going to go ahead and save. I like to use this save button up here on the top right, just over the fields pane. Once I hit save, it goes ahead, it just overwrites the current report that I'm on and it hits save. Now under file, you also have the option where you could have done a save or a save as if you wanted to create a brand new report with this, but I typically use this save button over here on the right-hand side. So congratulations, we've created our first visual. Out of all of that work, all those cool things that we saw, it ended up kind of looking lame here. It is just a simple 2-column chart with customer name and sales amount, but it's going to be the base for some amazing things that we're going to build out as we are working towards this sales analysis report. So hopefully you guys are all with me and going. Again, as we get started, we are going to now be starting to move forward. If you got lost or you got distracted or you didn't quite end up in the same spot because you got excited about it and you started building your own thing, you can always go ahead down here across the bottom, go to page L2. So lesson 2, this is where we're going to be starting from. So you can either start by building on this tab, or if you right-click on the tab, you have an option to duplicate page. This will actually just create, it'll say duplicate of L2, and you can begin working on that page. That allows you to keep these lessons pristine so that if you want to come back in here after this workshop, try it again, you have that starting point from each lesson. So anyway, that being said, we are going to go ahead and keep moving forward with lesson 2. In lesson 2, we want to expand on this data. So we want to start looking at this and start doing some of the analysis. Anytime we're looking at a BI report, we're trying to figure out how can we best help the user to make the informed decision. We should always be asking ourselves, who's looking at this? Why are they looking at this? What do they need to see? What additional information is going to provide value to them so they can make those informed business decisions? I know it's my favorite catchphrase, informed business decisions, woo-woo. The only thing I like more than that is when it's dynamic, it means less work for me. So let's go ahead and start looking at how do we break this out so we can see more information. Total sales doesn't tell me a whole lot. What I want to do is add some additional measures to this report. I want to add what we call time-based measures. So how can I tell if this is for a month to date or a year to date or quarter to date? Let's go ahead and add these measures. What we're going to do is over here under the sales table, I'm going to go ahead and navigate down to sales amount, and you're going to see we have our sales amount. Big problem that I just did, and if anyone was just following along with me, you might have as well. And that is, I'm navigating around here, but I'm not currently focused on any visuals. Anytime you're working in Power BI, you always want to remind yourself, focus is everything. You can tell when you have focus on a visual because if you click inside it, it has that border around it. Now, anything I do in the visualizations pane or the field pane will affect that visual. If I'm not on there and I just start clicking, it's going to affect the page. Okay? So select the visual first. And then let's go ahead and let's add our time-based measures. Now, one little trick I like on these visuals, sorry, this is a side note, is you can always resort this data just by clicking on the title. So if I click up there, you have that little arrow. It can go in descending order. I can change it to ascending order. I can change my customer name. I can go in alphabetical order. I could go in reverse alphabetical order. You might ask yourself, why is hands-on seminar above errands? I am guessing that that is bad data, that we have a space in front of that H. We can only solve so many of the bad data issues. We can't solve them all. So some of those data entry errors you might be seeing here, but this is in alphabetical order by customer name when I click on that. So there's just a quick way that we can help with some of the analysis of the data to say who are our top customers. I just click on sales amount based on total sales. These are our top customers. But if we want to add some additional clarity to this information, we're going to put the time-based measures in. So all we're going to do is come over here in the fields section under the sales table in the sales amount subfolder. Okay. Sales table, sales amount subfolder. We're just going to go ahead and turn on the sales amount month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. I just went ahead, I checked the boxes, it added them to my report. Now I could have accomplished the same thing by doing a drag and drop into the values section, or even like we did at the beginning of this lesson, drag and drop them into the visual. In order to see all of the data on this, I'm just going to resize this visual, make it a little bit wider so I can see all of my columns. This way I can see all the columns without having to scroll around through the data. Now for these time-based measures, it does help to break this up a little bit, and I can see here's my month to date or my quarter to date to year to date. But it still does kind of leave the question, the month to date for which month, or the quarter to date for which quarter. For these time-based measures, these calculations are actually being derived based on the most current date in your model. So in our case, if our maximum date was December 31st of 2019, these time-based measures would represent the data through that date. So this would be the data through period 12, or the quarter that period 12 is a part of, or the year to date for 2019. Okay. So those time-based measures are being driven by the data in our model. Excellent. Now we've completed exercise 2. All exercise 2 was to take our original table, add those additional time-based measures, and just see how those work. We want to add one more measure to this report, and that is going to be our selected measure. So underneath the sales field, under sales amount, go ahead and add sales amount selected. Sales amount selected is going to be a dynamic field. So right now it's going to stay empty because the system doesn't know what dimension we want that sales amount selected to be. So although month to date and quarter to date, year to date can be calculated based on our calendar, that sales amount selected is going to stay empty on this report. Okay. So what we're going to do in the next section is look at how can we actually start adding some items to this report that allow the users to interact with the data, to get in there and do a little bit more. So what we're going to do on this report is we're going to add some slicers to the report. Okay. So the first slicer that we want to add is going to allow our users to select what year this report is going to be run over. In order to add a slicer to the report, I'm just going to click in the white space. Under my visualizations, I'm going to find the slicer icon. Looks like a little table with a filter over the top of it. I'm just going to drag and drop that slicer right here into the white space on the report. I'm having a little bit of a delay on my side. So for some of my friends on the call, I've recognized a few of your names. You will know that my little bit of delay, translates to a whole lot of panic on my side going, oh no, what did I just click? What did I mess up? So I had a little bit of a delay there, but I just took the slicer and drag and drop it over onto the report. Now I have to say, okay, I know where that item's going to be, but what item is going to make up the slicer? So with that selected, we are going to now start using some of those time-based or the calendar options to help slice and dice our data here. So I'm going to shrink up everything so that I can see my calendar table. I'm going to go down to year, and I'm going to go ahead and add this year to the slicer. I can simply do it by just checking the box next to year, and you'll notice that in the visualizations pane, it went ahead and added it under field. You could also drag and drop that in. Either way is going to work just fine. And now I have a list over here of my years. As I'm looking at the years, I can see how those years are going to interact with my data by simply clicking on the option. I'm going to click on 2018, and now you'll notice my sales amount or my month to date amount are showing for 2018. This is going to be December of 2018. I could go back to 2017, or I could go up to 2019. So I can limit that data based on the slicer. They just automatically interact. It's pretty cool. So there's nothing else you have to do for the setup. Now with this slicer, I have a couple options for how it's going to look. I can leave this as this drop-down list, or I can actually make it so it looks more like buttons that the users get to choose. In order to change the way this slicer looks, all I'm going to do is select my slicer. I'm going to go to the Visualizations pane. I'm going to select the Format section, and I'm going to go under General. So in the Visualizations pane, Format section, under General, we're going to go down to the option called Orientation. And rather than vertical, we're going to choose horizontal. And that changes it up. The next thing we want to do is have this so all of those years show up in a single line on the report. So all I'm going to do is resize this visual pretty quickly so that I see all of my years. I'm just going across the report. Excellent. And you can change your year here. Instead of checking the box now, we just click on the button and it changes our data based on the year. That is our first slicer for year, represented as a horizontal list. Now we want to create the same functionality, but this time we want to be able to choose the period for our data. So we could go through the same steps and add a new slicer for period, or what I like to do is to be efficient. I'm going to go ahead and just copy what I already have and just simply change it from year to period. So what we're going to do is select the visualization. So make sure that you have, or the slicer, make sure you have it selected, and I'm going to do a Control C and then a Control V one time. And it kind of puts it right on top. I'm just going to drag this guy down so it sits right below it. Now I got a little excited, so I have two of them up there, but there we go. So now I have two slicers for year. I'm going to select that second slicer, the one that I just copied. And once you click on it, you'll notice that it renders itself correctly. So now we're going to change this from year to actually be our period number. So what I'm going to do is take in my field section under calendar, I'm going to take period number and just drag it over to the field. And you'll notice I can only have one item in my slicer, so it just removed year and put period number in there. There's only room for one. And again, I see all 12 months. So now I can be looking, if I choose period 6, my month to date number is now through period 6. My quarter to date is periods 4, 5, and 6. And then my year to date is through my balance through period 6 of 2019. I'll know that's correct. If I go ahead and choose 9, my numbers will change accordingly. Excellent. Now this has all been really good, but the problem we have is we still have this pesky last column that doesn't have anything in it. This column is going to be dynamic. We need to give the users the ability to choose which of these dimensions they want to see. Do they want to see month to date, quarter to date, or year to date? So part of the QuickLaunch solution is that we've given you a field to allow them to do that. So it's nothing you're pulling out of JD Edwards, but we've created this in here. It's going to be down here in a table called Selected Time Calc Filter. So underneath the table, Selected Time Calc Filter, you have two options, Selected Time Calc Filter and Selected Time Calc Filter ABBR, which stands for abbreviated. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add that. So again, we can do a slicer from scratch, or we can copy one of our current ones. So let's take our period slicer, do a Control C, do a Control V to add a new slicer. I'm going to drag it down. And then, again, focus on that new slicer that we just created, and I'm going to switch the option. So instead of period number, I want it to be the Selected Time Calc Filter abbreviated, Just drag and drop that into the field section. So the magic that's built behind the scenes is that this dimension that we have, or this metric that we have for the selected value, ties to this field here. And I can say, I want that to show me my month to date option. So in the slicer, I choose month to date. And now this column is a month to date column. If I choose in the slicer year to date, this column is a year to date column. You can tell if it's working correctly because that value is going to match the associated column in your current table. Okay. Great. Hopefully everybody is doing well and following along. Again, I'm not seeing any messages from anybody. Nobody's waving their hands frantically that we're going too fast. So we're going to keep going forward and even speed things up just a little bit as we continue to go. So I am watching the time and I realize I have about 45 more minutes. So rather than just talking really fast at the very end, I'll try to just go a little bit faster through each of these exercises as we go. Hopefully you're becoming a little bit more familiar with the navigation. So on this report, as we look at it, we want to get us again set up for our next section. So what we want to do is we want to replace all of our static time-based measures with the dynamic time-based measures. So here I would say static is like the sales month to date, sales quarter to date. The dynamic are anything with selected in the title. So we're going to change this out so this becomes more of a dynamic table for us. It's going to be driven by these slicers. In order to do that, we first need to focus on our table and we need to remove those static amounts. So let's go ahead and first remove sales amount. I'm just going to simply click on the X and sales amount will go away. We're going to remove the sales amount month to date, quarter to date, and year to date, leaving us with two columns, customer name and sales amount selected. Now what we want to do is we want to add a few additional items in here for these dynamic measures. So we're going to go underneath the sales table and we're going to add in our prior year values. So let's go to sales and then under sales amount, if we scroll down here, we are going to see that we have sales amount selected, has the yellow check next to it. We want to add the sales amount selected prior year. So again, I can either check the box or I could do a drag and drop. We also want to add sales amount sales amount versus prior year selected. So you're going to scroll down just a little bit and it's sales amount versus the prior year. And then we want, so that's going to show our variance, and then we want the percentage off of that variance. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the sales amount prior year selected percent. So now I'm looking based on my period, based on my year, and then I can base what is my selected item. I'm looking at a month to date. So for September of 2019, the current year, we have Best Buy at $12,000, $12,031. Last year they were $12,188. So we are negative 157, which is a minus 1.3% roughly. So we can start making these again more dynamic. They're going to interact with our slicers. Excellent. Now this is a table and it works just fine. The other type of table that we can see on a report, I'm just going to select that, is we could actually change this from just a flat table over to a matrix. So it's the icon right next to the table visualization on the visualizations pane. And you can tell it's a matrix because you're now going to have a blue line that goes down a column and a blue line that goes across the top. This matrix option is just going to allow us to add multiple dimensions to both the row section for the drill down and the columns. It's going to have this report feel a little bit more like a crosstab report or a pivot table that we're used to using. So whenever we start doing some of those drill downs, this matrix report, the matrix layout is the better layout for that. So I'm just going to change that over to matrix. And we're going to go ahead and hit save. We've now completed our exercise 3 and have a dynamic report based on our slicers. The next exercise is pretty quick. What we're going to look at is we want to actually work with the layout of this report and how our data sits. So I'm just jumping back over to our target report here, what we're trying to build, and we want to lay the data out. So we're going to add a title to the report, and we're going to clean up our slicers and put them at the top of the report so they look like this report. Okay. So now I'm going to navigate back over to my report, and I first want to add the title. You may need to make some room for the title on your report. If your table is too far up, all you have to do is focus on it, maybe shrink it down a little bit for right now. What we're seeing in there isn't as important as the space that we have on the canvas to work with it. So let's just make that a little bit smaller. And we're going to add a text box for our title. So a text box is not a visualization. It's not looking at data out of the database. So what we're going to do is across the top of your window, you're going to see in this little menu bar an option for a text box. Just click on that text box and it's going to add that box right into your canvas. If you click in that canvas, you can then start typing. So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and just call this sales analysis report. Now I can go ahead and change the font size on this. I'm going to go ahead and make that 20. I'm going to change the font to make it bold so that it really stands out. And then I can also resize that box here. Now, I changed my text, but just like if I was working in Word or Excel, all I did was change what future text I put in. If I want that to apply to what I just typed, I need to actually highlight over the top of it and change that font and that size. So you can either set the font and the size ahead of time, or you can wait and type what you want and then come back. I'm actually going to make the size of this about a 14, just to make sure I have enough room here on my report. So I can again drag this up and move it around so that it fits right. Excellent. I'm not going to go through any of these other options. You guys should be fairly familiar with these text boxes and centering things, left justified, right justified. So that works just like any other text box. Now what we also want to do is we want to start moving these slicers. So we'll resize and move these slicers accordingly so that they match our report. The very first one that we're going to do is we're going to take this one for the selected option, the month to date, quarter to date, year to date. So I'm just going to drag this, make it a little bit smaller so that I see my 3 options there. And I'm going to resize it and then drag it up to the top of the canvas. Okay, so I first took the slicer that controls what the selected amount is going to be, month to date, quarter to date, year to date, resized it, and then just did a drag and drop to put it at the top. The next slicer I'm going to put up there is my year. So again, I don't need my user to see every single year that we have for this report. So I'm just going to go ahead and shrink this down again till I see about 3 years. It gives them a pretty good idea. And I'm going to, once I have that resized, I can just click on there and drag and drop that up to the top. And then we're going to do the same thing with our period slicer. So I'm going to have to make that a little bit smaller so it fits. I do want to make sure I get all 12 periods in there so that they don't have to scroll. So I might have to just, I bring mine up a little bit, then keep resizing. I'm going to move everything over just a little so that it fits. And now I have all my slicers at the top. So it's very easy for the user to simply scroll through here, pick the selected item. I want to see year to date for 2018 through period 9. Makes for a very clean, easy user experience. Excellent. Once you have those items resized and positioned correctly, now we're going to go ahead and just save our report. I'm going to hit my save button. Now we're going to start getting into making these pictures. So we want to go ahead, and the first visualization that we're going to create is going to be a waterfall chart. So we use the waterfall charts because they're a great way to analyze variances across a time base. So if I am looking at my sales, what's my difference in sales from last year to this year, and I want to see what's the cumulative effect on that over maybe a period of time. We can use a waterfall chart to see that. So what we want to do is, rather than create that from scratch, we're going to just use this base matrix that we have as our data for that waterfall chart. I'm going to just squeeze this up so it doesn't take up more than about half the screen here. I'm going to select it just like we did with those slicers. I'm going to do a Control-C and then a Control-V. And it makes a copy. And I can just drag and drop that over next to it. I have something very special going on with my copy paste. I have a 2-for-1 going on my desktop. So every time I do the copy paste, for who knows what reason, I'm getting 2 pastes for every copy. So I don't know, something fun to look into. But my husband would tell you it's because I like deals, but I'm not sure that that's actually the case. So I'm just going to go ahead, navigate those around so that I have my 2 tables sitting next to each other. They both fit on the screen okay. And we are going to start working with this matrix to turn it into a waterfall chart. So before we could switch the matrix to the waterfall chart, we need to add the sales rep dimension. So what we need to do is, over in our fields, underneath the customer, we're going to find the sales rep. I'm just going to shrink up or close up some of these fields. I'm going to go to the customer table, scroll down until I find the sales rep, and then we are going to drag and drop sales rep just above the customer name. So again, it's the customer table. We're going to find sales rep and add it to our matrix here, just above customer name. So I see all the sales reps. I could then drill down and I could see the customers that sales rep has sold to. So this will become our drill hierarchy. So to switch this over to be the waterfall chart, all we're going to do is select our visual. Over in the visualizations pane, We're going to find the icon for the waterfall chart. Mine happens to be the third one in. I select that option, and now my visual has turned into the waterfall chart. It defaulted to the first time-based measure in our y-axis for our y-axis. So the y-axis is what it's actually showing here as the value. What it did was it took our first time-based measure, which was sales amount selected, and it threw it in there. If we want a different visual for that, we can always change that. So what we want to do is we're going to swap that out, and we're actually going to change that so that we have a different item. We're going to take the sales amount selected and we're going to drag that down into the tooltips. Okay? It's valuable, just not so valuable to what we're trying to do here. Okay? So just take sales amount selected, drag it down to the tooltips section, and place it above the sales amount selected PY. Next, we're going to select the sales amount versus prior year selected. And we're going to drag that up to the y-axis. You'll notice here the sales reps that had an increase are going to be green for positive. Those that had a decrease are going to be red for negative. As we hover over any one of these, we'll see our tooltips pop up to show us the data behind that amount. So we can see our sales amount, we can see the prior year, and the percentage.
Michelle, this is Adam here.
I am getting.
You might get great. No, you might get better sample data maybe on 2019 instead of 2018.
Thank you. Still looking at my 2019. Thank you, Adam. Excellent. Now, this visual is also, as we look at it, it's based on how it's sorting as well. So ours actually looked pretty good here. Yours may not, depends on the order that you did your button clicks, but we can always change the sort order for this visual by clicking on the more options and going down to sort by. So what we want to do is we want to make sure right now it is sorting by sales rep, and then we want to choose the sales amount versus PY selected. So we want to make sure that's the first one. So I have my sales rep as a dimension, but then I want to make sure I choose sales amount by PY selected. Depending on how you did that, it may have still had that sales amount selected in there for sorting. And then also we can see this in the ascending or descending order. So if I just change that to ascending, so this really depends on what is that story you're trying to show or you're trying to tell. Okay. But I can quickly see that we had a lot of salespeople that had great increase over last year. And then we had a couple of them like Mr. Lee over here, who's not having such a great year. So we could start looking in and trying to figure out what happened to him. We can also see what's that impact on our total sales. So we have very little growth in our total sales overall based on this waterfall chart. Now, if we wanted to see what customers are causing these sales reps to go positive or negative, all we have to do within the visual is to right click, and I can go ahead and choose my drill down. And now I can see for that sales rep, here is the breakdown by customer, which customers actually increased their sales and which customers decreased their sales. To go back up, I just click on that little up arrow, drill back over. So I can see Robert Lee's doing really well. What happened there? And I can see that he has a lot of customers that have increased their sales, just a few of them that maybe have gone down a little bit this year. So great, and I'm just going to drill back by doing, I like to click that arrow on the top. You also have that option to do the drill up using your right click, and it would take you back up. Either one of those works just fine. Now, to provide a little bit more value in this visual, we need to work a little bit on the formatting. So I want to make sure I give it a proper title. So I'm going to highlight the visual and go to the formatting paint bar or paintbrush here. And we're just going to go down to our section for title. And I'm going to change the title here. I'm going to call this Sales Variance by Sales Rep. Can change the font color to be black. And I'm going to make the size, as I just keep scrolling down here, a 10. And then I always like my titles to be bold, so I'm just going to change my font family here to be bold. You'll notice I don't even try to say what type of font that is. It's just that default one that starts with the S and it's going bold. So again, I went ahead in my formatting under visualizations under format to the title section. I gave it a meaningful title, changed the font color, the size, and I made it bold. And we can now go ahead and save our report. We've created our our waterfall visual now on this report. Next, we want to create a scatter chart. So again, we're just going to take the waterfall visual, highlight it. I'm going to go ahead and copy it using the Control-C and the Control-V. Okay. I don't know. I get multiple here. I'm going to rearrange these, kind of drag them around a little bit so that they're not on top of each other. I don't know if you guys need to resize yours as well. But now I'm going to take my waterfall chart and we are going to create a scatter chart visual. So in our scatter chart visual, what we want to do is just first did the copy, select the visual, and then I'm going to come over here under visuals and I'm going to choose the option for scatter chart. I am not sure what all I got myself drilled down into here for my data, but I've got my scatter chart. We're going to update some of these fields. So what we're going to do is over in the visualizations pane, our x-axis on this scatter chart is going to be our sales amount selected. So select your scatter chart. Underneath the tooltips, I have that sales amount selected. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to move that. I'm going to take what we have, the sales amount prior year selected, and move that down. I'm going to take sales amount selected and move that up to the x-axis. Swap that out. We're also going to go ahead on this and I'm going to remove the rest of these options. I don't need these tooltips, because what I actually want to see in here for my scatter chart is I want to see my sales amount, how it correlates to my gross profit and my gross profit percent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I could leave those in if I want those as part of the tooltips as I hover, or I could take those out. Okay. But we're going to go ahead and add in the y-axis to help add dimension to the scatter chart. And that is going to be our gross profit percent. So underneath the sales table, we're going to go to the gross profit subfolder. I'm going to find my gross profit percent selected, down a little bit. I'm going to drag that over to the Y axis. And then I'm just going to take gross profit selected, it's down just a little bit further, and I'm going to put that in the size. This will actually impact the size of our dots. So if we want to actually analyze this data over customer performance rather than sales rep, all we need to do is we're going to remove sales rep from the field's dimensions. So underneath visuals, under details, take sales rep and just remove it. Click the X. Now we want to be able to drill to this. So what we want to do is we want to go from the customer down to the channel. So in our legend here, or I'm sorry, in the legend, we're going to add the channel. So we're just going to go underneath customer. And I'm going to find my channel field. And I'm going to drag it right here in the legend. Okay, so now I've got my channel. Is it online or is it retail? And I can see, okay, for each of my customers, what's that amount? We're going to keep defining this out a little bit further. So from the branch table now, we haven't been in there yet, we're going to go ahead and we're going oh, we don't want the branch table. We want to go ahead and add product group and product subgroup. So that's actually in the item branch table. We're going to go down here and I'm going to find my product group and my product subgroup. And we're going to add those just right underneath that customer name. So I'm going to go to product group and my product subgroup. This is again going to give me that drill capability. So I start at the highest level of the customer, then I can go down and see by product group, how are they doing? And then by the subgroup. Okay, so I'm building that drill hierarchy on my visual. We're going to add a little bit of formatting to this chart as well. So we want to make sure in the visualizations, we go over to the formatting ribbon. We're going to go down here under category label, and you might need to make your pane a little bit wider if you're having a hard time seeing that or finding it. Under category labels, let's go ahead and just turn that on. And then in the title section, again, we want to give it a meaningful title. So I'm going to go under the title section and I'm going to change the title of this to sales and gross profit percent by customer. Now, if you scroll down, you'll notice that you don't have to change the font or the size of the text because that just all carried over when we did that copy paste. So now as I look at my scatter chart, I've got my new egg. I can click on it and it will drill me down in there, if I hit my drill down, to see it by product group. And then I could again drill down again to go to the subgroup. You'll notice that all of my visuals are interacting together. So as I change one, it's going to change the other visuals. To go back up, I can use those arrows, or I could do the right click and drill up. Excellent. Congratulations on your scatter chart. Let's go ahead and click that Save button. So, and we will continue on. We are now going to start at lesson number 7. So again, if you've fallen behind or you got confused, I know scatter charts there's a lot going on there. Feel free to start with that page lesson 7, you can do the right click and duplicate the page if you'd like to, or you can continue building from the current page that you're on. So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add another visual. This time we want to add a stacked bar chart visual. So this is great to show comparisons between two different categories or break something in. Also, how does it compare to the whole? So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to copy my scatter chart. So again, I'm going to do my Control-C, Control-V. I'll see if I can get this to do it one time this time. Hopefully you guys are having better luck than me. It worked that time. Yes. So only gave me one copy. And we are going to change this one now to a scattered bar chart. So I'm just going to select my visual, go up under visualizations, and find my visualization for the scattered bar chart, or stacked bar chart, sorry. Should be your very first one. It's always nice. It always starts in that top left corner there for you. So we want to update this chart so that we have the right dimensions for the chart. So what we want to see ultimately is our gross profit by product group and region. So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and update a few of these dimensions on this report. So from our fields section over here, we are going to remove customer name from the axis, and we're going to drag sales amount selected down to the tooltips. We're going to take the gross profit selected and move that down as well into the tooltip section. And we'll take the gross profit selected down into the tooltips section. So everything is now down in our tooltips section. Okay. We're going to add region to this report as well. So let's go ahead and in the customer table, let's find the region field. And let's go ahead and move region into our legend. Our value should be our gross profit selected. So I think I got too excited that I moved that down. So let's take gross profit selected from the tooltips, and let's move that right back up into the value section. And we're going to get rid of a couple of these other items in here in our tooltips that aren't really providing any value for us. So let's go ahead and let's get rid of anything to do with prior year. So I'm going to get rid of the sales amount for the prior year selected, the sales amount selected prior year, and also that prior year selected percent. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean that up. We don't want to have this extra data that just creates the noise. So now I have my stacked bar chart that just shows how I am doing here with my gross profit by product group and region. So we want to go ahead and finish the formatting on this report. So we're going to go in the visualizations pane over to the formatting brush. We're going to go to the title section, and we're going to change the title so that it has some value. And I'm just going to call this gross profit by product group and region. Again, I don't need to do anything with the font or how it looks because I had copied this from a previous visual. Once I click out, Again, we can go ahead and hit our save and save our report. Now we've done fairly well. We've created our base report. We've done a waterfall chart. We've done our scatter chart. We have our stacked bar chart. We also created our 3 slicer values to bring the data into the report, and our title. The next item we want to look at is to create these KPIs. So we want to create the KPI visuals. KPIs are a great way to really highlight a single value and compare it to something else. Are you doing better or worse than this? How's your actual compared to budget or actual to forecast? So we want to go ahead and add these KPIs onto our report. So in order to get started, we need to make a little bit of room on this, our current report. So if anybody is lost, you can always, again, we're at lesson 8, so that could be your starting point. But I'm, again, just continuing on from where I was at on my page 1. And I'm going to highlight my matrix here. And I don't need this information on here. I really like the pictures. I think that's more compelling for my users. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to hit the delete and it goes away. This now gives me a lot more real estate to add my KPIs to the report. So let's go ahead and add the KPI visualization. So for the KPI, all we're going to do is find the visualization over in the visualizations pane. And it's the one that's a little box with a up and down arrow in it. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that and add that to my report. And then I'm going to define it. The 3 items that we're going to use to define our our KPI is going to be the indicator, or what is the amount we're looking at? What is our trend axis? So we're going to look at this over the course of a year. Are we looking at it over the course of a period? We'll use year in our case. And then what are we comparing it against? So what we're going to look at for this first indicator is our sales amount compared to how did we do last year. So all we're going to do is go to the sales table, and I'm going to find in my sales amount folder my sales amount selected, and I'm going to drag and drop that up as the indicator. So based on what I choose in my slicers, what is my amount? And I'm going to compare that to last year. So in the same folder, find the sales amount selected prior year and drag and drop that into the target. And then what is our dimension on that? What is our trend axis? And that is going to be the year. So we're going to navigate ourselves up to the calendar table. I'm going to find year, and I'm going to put that in as the target. So now you'll notice that our KPI comes in. We have our indicator, we have our target, and it's automatically will either be red or green, depending if we're above or below the target. We don't have to do anything for that. It just automatically comes in that way. So we want to go ahead and resize this visual. I'm just going to go ahead and shrink it up a little bit. And I want to add some of that formatting. So we want to give it a meaningful title. So I'm just going to come over here under the visualizations pane to the formatting brush. I'm going to go down to title and rename the title. The title for this KPI is simply going to be sales versus prior year. So sales versus prior year. Again, I'm going to have to set the font color and the size and the type because this was a new visual that we created. We didn't copy it from anything else. I'm going to drag that up so it sits right underneath that sales report. Excellent. So we've created our first KPI just to show us our sales this year versus last year. Now let's create another KPI that shows our gross profit percent. So in this one, again, we can just take our current KPI, I'm going to do a Control C and a Control V. Just drag that down. And we're just going to swap out some of those values here. So this time our indicator is going to be the gross profit percent selected. So that's going to be in our sales folder underneath the gross profit subfolder. And I've got my gross profit percent selected. So make sure you're focused. Focus on that new KPI that you created. Take your gross profit percent selected, and I'm just going to go ahead and move that into the indicator. And what am I comparing that against? The same value from last year. So find the gross profit percent selected prior year and drag that into the target. And I can remove the sales amount selected prior year. Excellent. And again, we can see that that automatically takes on that it's negative. We're not doing as well this year as we were last year. We're down 4.7%. So my number is going to be in red. Now, the only thing we need to adjust on this one is going to be the title. So let's give it a meaningful title. It's in the visualizations pane under the formatting brush. Let's go down to title and let's change the title so this has our gross profit percent versus prior year. Great. So now we've successfully added our 2 KPIs. We're going to go ahead and just save our report. And I know we're getting close. We've got about 6 minutes left. So we have a lot more to go through. Probably, I would say about 20 more minutes. Hopefully you guys can stick in there with me. If you need to drop off, that's okay. We can either follow back up with you to walk you through some of this stuff individually, or we'll have a recording available that you could watch as well. So hopefully you guys can stick in there a little bit longer. I'm sorry I went long. I'll blame it on Adam and his introduction. How's that? Always blame it on somebody else, right? So we want to go ahead and organize our visuals here. We're getting very close to being done with the sales analysis report. After we finish the sales analysis report, the last piece we have to build here is going to be this one last visual, and then we'll create the sales detail report. We'll look at the drill through to that. So those are a couple of the items we have left, and talk a little bit about publishing the reports as well. So just so you know, but we'll get through this last visual here on our report. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to make sure that we organize our visuals so that we have enough room to create and add that last item. So all we're going to do is move some of these around. I'm going to take my waterfall chart here. I'm going to move it up right next to that KPI. Kind of shrink that down. And then I want to shrink down this bar chart and put it right next to it. So again, I'm just trying to mimic what we had on our initial report. So I drag that around and get those set. Excellent. The last chart we're going to do is that area chart. So now we have that open space for it, so we can create the area chart. This is going to be exercise 10. So if you got lost or you're not sure, you can always start with that L10 to add this area chart. So I hit save. I like to save a lot. I don't trust myself usually. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to start that area chart from scratch. So all we're going to do, we have our blank space on the canvas. I'm going to come up here, find the area chart visual and click on it. And it's going to put that in that open space for me. Did a pretty good job of sizing that. If you need to resize yours just a little bit, feel free, just using the drag and drop there. And now we're going to define what we want to see in this area chart. So in the area chart, we definitely want to have our axis or what we're going to see the values going across based on period. It's going to be time-based. So I'm going to go up to calendar. I'm going to find my period description short option. I'm just going to drag that over to the axis. This gives us a name rather than the number. So I'm going to see September, or I'm going to see January instead of 1, 2, or 3. The next one we're going to have is our legend. Our legend is going to be the channel. So the channel, if you remember, was under the customer table. It's the very first option. I'm just going to drag that into my legend. And then the value, what do I want to see plotted? This is going to be my sales amount versus the prior year. So that we're going to go back down again to the sales table. Underneath the sales amount subfolder, we're going to find sales amount versus prior year selected. About 3/4 of the way down there in that subfolder. I'm going to drag that over to the value. And now we see our area chart. Now, the problem with this chart, it doesn't quite look like what we thought it should, because this chart is only showing values for the one period. So based on our slicer up here, it is showing the data for that specific period. So you can see it just changed from September to June. Okay. We actually want this to show data across the entire year. We want to see all 12 of those periods. So what we need to do here is we need to actually change the interaction between this visual and our period slicer. I don't want that period slicer to impact this specific visual. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to select the period slicer, and then in your menu bar across the top, there's an option for visual interactions. So choose that and turn on edit interactions. And what you see is you have this little Ghostbuster sign next to every item on our page. So down there by the scatter chart in the top right-hand corner, I'm just going to click the none, the option, the little Ghostbuster sign. It's going to disassociate or break up the relationship between that slicer and that visual. So now it doesn't matter what period the user selects, that slicer will always show all 12 periods. To get out of this mode, I simply go back to visual interactions and I change edit interactions to off. It will keep the setting that I had. So now if I go back and I'm looking at 2019 as my year for period 9, okay, I can see all 12 periods there. Okay. So just for the area chart, we turned off or changed that relationship that it had with the interaction. Now we want to format this area chart a little bit. So what we're going to do is select our area chart, and let's go ahead and in the visualization underneath the formatting, we're going to go ahead and underneath the shapes area, we're going to go ahead and turn on our markers. So right down here it says show marker. We're just going to turn that to on. What that's going to do is it's going to put a dot next to each of the items or each of the values. So that's under the shapes. We can turn on that indicator so we can see where it's at. Underneath the title, let's give it a meaningful title. This is actually the sales variance by period and channel. So let's go ahead and just type that in, sales variance by period and channel. I'm going to set my font there so that it's black. All of that formatting again. It's nice when you have those standards kind of set ahead of time and you go through this the first time so that you can get these right. I hate having to go back in here a second time. So it's nice to lay those out. Now, the other thing we can do in here, and I kind of like this, once you get more familiar with the size of your sheet, how big things are, we've been doing a lot of resizing by just doing the drag and drop, but you can actually, under the General tab, you could be more specific with that. So I can say that for my width here, I want the width on this to be 610, and then I can go back to my scatter chart, and I can make the width on that 610 so that it splits that space evenly between the two visuals. Okay. And mine is looking a little funky. It will clean itself up in a minute, I'm sure. But I'm going to go ahead and just resize both my scatter chart and my area chart to have a width of 610. So that is within the formatting ribbon underneath General, and you can do the height, you can do the width. So you want to make those look similar, look the same. To be very specific, you just type the numbers in. Otherwise, you can do the drag and drop, and the numbers will change for you. So up to you on which way you want to do that. But that is how we can get those to look all the way to look good. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Hopefully, everybody, congratulations. At this point, we have recreated the sales analysis report, and it should, hopefully yours looks just like that initial report that we sent out to you guys at the beginning of this workshop. So hopefully you guys had some success with that. It is 1:04. I went about 4 minutes over on building that report. There's a couple other things, like I said, that I want to show you. If you have time and can stick with us, would love to take you through the last couple pieces, and that is looking at the drill through. So how do I take this sales analysis report if I'm looking at an item here and I want to go see the detail behind it? How can I pull that next report? So that would be this detail here where it's going to pass the values over. We're going to see it. So that's what I'm going to walk you through next. In our report that we created, mine is still saying page 1. If I don't like that name, all I have to do is right click on that page, and I'm going to go ahead and say rename page. I'm going to call this sales analysis workshop. Probably should have done that a long time ago, but I was focused on bigger things. So now I've renamed my page so that I know. I technically should have called it sales analysis, but we already have that out here in this specific report. So I need my name to be unique. But there's the report we created. To create this detail report, now I could start from a blank canvas, but there's a lot of extra work that I'd have to do there, specifically creating all of these slicers. Now, since my report that I already built has that, all I'm going to do is duplicate this report. So we're going to right click on the sales analysis workshop, choose duplicate page, and I'm now going to rename this, and I'm going to call it sales detail workshop. And we're going to clean this up. Let's go ahead and get rid of all the items that we don't want to see on here. So I'm going to get rid of all those visualizations that we had created, the KPIs, all the charts. Delete those out. And then we want to rename this report. So up here in the title, let's go ahead and let's just call this sales details. I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller. It doesn't need to be that big. We're going to make some room for another item that's going to come in here. Excellent. I'll give you guys just a second to catch up with me if you're following along still. We're just doing a lot of deletes. So I just highlighted each one of those items. I hit delete on my keyboard to make it go away. Now we want to actually create that table that has our detailed information in it. We're going to pull some information from the customer table, from the sales table, from the item table into this detail report. So the very first thing we're going to do is from the customer table, we're going to go ahead and add in customer name. That'll be our first column. So I'm going to go to customer, find customer name, and again, I'm just going to drag and drop this over here and create that table. Make this bigger. I can do this at the beginning or I can do it at the end. Either way, do it at the beginning here for me. So I've got customer name in here. We're going to add channel to the report. Just going to drag and drop that next. And we're going to add sales rep. So those are the 3 fields from the customer table: customer name, channel, and sales rep. From the item branch table, I'm going to add some of that item information. Let's go ahead and add in here the product group and the product. So I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to find that product group and the product. I'm just dragging and dropping that in. Now, my columns aren't giving me the right size here, so I'm just going to drag those a little bit bigger. I can resize those as I go. No reason to panic yet. The final fields we want to add are going to be from the sales table. So I'm going to just go ahead and navigate down here. I'm going to go to the sales table. And in this sales table, we're going to go under quantity ordered. So in that subfolder, and we're going to add the quantity ordered selected value. And then from the sales amount column subfolder, we're going to add the sales amount selected. And that's going to give us our details. Now, because this is details, it's a lot of information to read, we might want this to render a little larger. So under the visualizations pane, I'm going to go to the formatting ribbon or the formatting brush. And there's 2 options we can change here. Under column headers, I can go ahead and make that size just a little bit bigger. I'm going to change that up to a 10. I also can make the font on that bold if I'd like for my headers. And then I can also do the text. So I'm going to go to values here, and I'm going to change the font size here up to 10. I'm not going to make this bold. I'm just going to make it 10 so that I can see it. Okay, so that just makes my details a little bit bigger so that I can see. Now, in order for this to be a drill through report, we actually have to tell it which items are going to affect the details that I see here. So back in the visualizations pane underneath the field section, you'll notice that you have a section down here for drill through. This is where we tell it the values that'll come from the source report. So we're going to add some of those fields here. Basically, we want to add anything that could possibly come from the source report and is available here on our targets. So we're going to go back through several of those fields that we just saw. So we're going to go back up to customer, and as a drill through, we are going to add the customer name. I'm just going to drag and drop that down here under drill through fields. Oh, sorry. You have to make sure you're focused on your details there when you do this. Not sure why mine's closed up. Then we're going to go ahead and take the channel and just drag and drop it right underneath. Now, when it comes in, it's bringing it in expanded. I just like to close it back up so that I can see those. So we're not doing any additional filtering as it comes over. We're just dragging it in. And then also that region. I'm going to drag and drop that in here as a drill through. So I'm using that arrow to close it up. And the sales rep. So those are the 4 fields from the customer table: customer name, channel, region, and sales rep. Next, we want to bring over product and product group. So what we're going to do is go down to our item branch table, find that product and product group. And again, I'm just going to drag and drop those over into the drill through fields. Now, as soon as I add that as a drill through, you'll notice that Power BI gave us a button. This is the button that as I drill through from the source report, this will allow me to go back over to the source report. So it automatically put the button in there. You may need to move your title over a little bit or resize some of the items if you can't see it. Mine just happened to fall in here really nicely, so I'm happy about that. But you may need to do a little dragging and dropping yourself. I'm going to go ahead and select that button, and I'm going to do a little bit of formatting on that button as well. So on the button, I'm going to go down here to the icon card. And I'm going to change this so that the line color is blue. Kind of a crazy blue. And that changes the color of the button. So, or maybe I want to change it so that it really pops. I make it red. Okay. So go ahead and change that. That is the icon color. And then if I go to the title option, I go ahead and add a title to this. First, you have to turn it on, and then I can type this in. I'm going to just type in the word back. And now it's going to show the word back in there. I could make it a little bigger if I wanted to. I might need to make my icon a little bigger. I can change the font color. I like to make the title the same color as the actual icon. I can also make that bold if I need it to stand out a little bit more. And now I have the button on my target report. So let's go ahead and try this drill through and see how it works. I'm going to hit my save button, make sure everything's saved. I'm going to go back to my sales analysis workshop report that I created. And I'm going to go ahead and in my scatter chart, I'm just going to take this new egg option. I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose drill through, and I'm going to see that I now have a drill through option available to me. If I choose the drill through for the sales detail workshop, it's going to pass over all of those items. So you'll notice in my visualizations pane, customer name is now set to new egg, period is set to 9. So I'm looking at the year to date, I'm looking at 2019, and I can see the details that make up that $446,000. Again, if I came back to my source report and I hover, I can see the amount is at $446,000. Okay. So I can see my target and my details. Okay. So in the user experience, when they're in this detail, all they have to do is hit the back button and it will take them back to that source report. Okay, so our target will take them back to the source. Because we are in an edit mode, we have to actually hit the control button. If you hover over it, it tells you you have to hold the control when you click the button and it will take you back. In a normal user experience, they don't have to do that. So that is our drill through. So the drill down, if I double click or I use the arrows, is going to be driven by the values that we have set up here in our details or in our dimensions. The drill through is going to actually be controlled by those drill through parameters over on that target report. So whenever I do the right click and drill through, I will see listed here any pages that have drill through parameters, and I can choose those to go to those pages. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining me today. I know we went through a lot of information creating the sales analysis report, creating the sales detail report. Hopefully you guys all had a chance and you had some success on building your report. And I am, again, apologize for going just a little bit long, but hopefully you guys were able to see some pretty cool things and get a chance to play with the tool. So with that, I'm going to just open it up. Adam or David, did you guys have any questions or anything that we need to follow up on the call that came
No,
through during the workshop?
No, actually, we respond to a lot of them. There were actually a fair number of questions, other than just a few little connectivity challenges. But since we've already gone over, I think we'll pass on sharing the list. Everybody that did ask questions, we will follow up with you and make sure that you're satisfied with the response. Thank you, everybody, for staying over time. We actually had almost everybody sticking around. So well done, Michelle. Thank you for providing the workshop today. If anybody has any questions, again, we're here. If you had any issues that you didn't bring to our attention of getting connected, that environment will keep out there for a month. So if you wanted to continue and tinker, we did record the session, so we provide the recordings. If you want to kind of go again at your own pace, you'll have that available for you. So thanks again, everybody, for your time. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, David, for the workshop. And
Adam,
yep.
sorry to interrupt. Before we jump off, somebody's asking what is QuickLaunch for Power BI, and I thought that was pretty important to mention to everybody.
Good. Do you want to take a stab at that one, David?
Sure. So QuickLaunch is our accelerator product that we have developed for JD Edwards. It's a suite of database views, as well as the semantic model that we have been connected to here. So it's really that bridge between JD Edwards and Power BI. And we had a slide, I think, when we were introducing the workshop that kind of went over this, but
yeah, the next one down, right below that one. Yeah, here you go.
Gotcha. So if we were to try to connect Power BI to a JD Edwards transaction system, it would be quite a cryptic process to actually go through and try to model, connect to all the tables. So the 42119 is the sales history table, or the 4102 is the item table. So we then have to connect to that data, relate that data, and then start to make it more business friendly. So rename all the fields, and this can be a quite complex and difficult challenge for you. And if any of you have, Power BI Desktop's free, so you can go out and you can download it and try to connect to your your JD Edwards database if you have the permissions, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But what we've done is we've already our QuickLaunch product has already set up to extract that data from your transaction system, model it, which is what you're seeing in step 2 here, and then also we have some pre-built Power BI reports and templates and other deliverables as part of the QuickLaunch solution.
Perfect. Great, thank you, David. Like I said, anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to, there'll be follow-up emails coming. So I think there's also a survey that you can put a comment in there as well that should be prompting you as you exit. So thank you, everybody, for your time today, and we look forward to future discussions and workshops together. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, David.